right, so let's go into it. We're trying something a little different camera angle. Me standing up today, changing things up. Put a lot of effort into the last few videos, and not many views. I mean, that's the nature of the beast, unfortunately. I am not a massive YouTube channel, so some things will get views, some will not. So I felt like having a little bit of a different flavor to this one, having a little bit more fun, being a little bit more free-flowing. My honest opinion about the Bruins, right? As this camera shakes like a sieve. My honest opinion is the Bruins. If you could please stop. This is honestly what I think. I think they're a solid team. I think they're a good team. I don't really think they're a great team. And that's going to be crazy. You're going to think I'm crazy for saying that when you look at the record. Like, Paul, how could you say that they're not a great team? Because they scare the crap out of me. If I'm being honest with you, when I'm watching them play, and it's a close game, my butt puckers. It does. It puckers pretty heavily. Bruins have, I think, the most overtime losses, overtime/shootout losses in the NHL. You can fact check on me. I'm not going to be picking up my phone right now. Let's just free ball, spitball. But they're up there right now in the NHL, right? Last season they won those games. This season they are just losing them. And let's just call it what it is. Last year was a magical run. We're never going to see that most likely again for the Bruins fans. And they blew it in the first round. And, whether you want to blame the management and the goaltending, which I kind of do. I think they should have went to Swayman earlier if Ullmark was hurt, but that's a whole different story. But what do I think about this Bruins team right now? I think they're a very good team. I don't think they're good enough to win a Stanley Cup. Like I could be proven wrong. 2011, the Bruins at the trade deadline, who they had? Chris Kelly, Richard Peverley, no superstar level names, right? But you had Bergeron, you had Krejci, you had Zdeno Chara on the back end, you had Dennis Seidenberg, Timmy Thomas with his backup Rask at the time. You had a good team, right? But let's also not kid ourselves. Timmy Thomas was electric during that playoff run. And when I look at this Bruins team, similar in a way, if they were to win a cup, it would have to be Swayman or Ullmark, most likely Swayman at this point, getting extremely hot, and they being far more disciplined and just shutting and stifling down teams. Now, the Bruins are capable of that, right? We have seen them shut down octane offenses, but then they decide to stop focusing and play horrific. There is times, when the Bruins was up, they were 3-1, 4-1 against the Edmonton Oilers. They're up a few goals. And then they choke the lead. And then they score. And then the Oilers score. We're going overtime. And it's what? What are we watching, folks? Now they win the game, right? But Calgary, first period did not start well for them. Did not start well for the Bruins. But second, third period looked better. They lose in overtime still, though. Right? They lose another one in extras. And that is what it is, right? But when I see the Bruins team, I see a very good team that has the ability to shut down others defensively. But they don't have offensively the puck possession at times. The puck possession time isn't great. You have a superstar in Pastrnak. Marchand is doing really well, right? Doing really well. And Coyle has far exceeded my expectation. I mean, he's really been great in that center role. He's gonna have a career high in points. He's really blown my expectations out of the water, right? Pavel Zacha and Charlie Coyle, I think, are good. But right now, Bruins, if this was their final roster, do I think they're winning a Stanley Cup? No. I think they could get out of the first round, maybe even a second round. But if this current iteration of the Bruins team was to win a Stanley Cup, they'd have to get hot. And they'd have to be far more disciplined than they are, because when I see the Bruins right now, they'll have these great stretches of play, like the Oilers game, for example. And mind you, the Oilers have Connor McDavid, Draisaitl, Vander Kane, Zach Hyman's great net front presence. Then it just, they have top-end talent. So I'm not trying to just take it all away from the Oilers, but then the Bruins I feel like they got tentative, a little bit afraid, we're up by a few, we got to kind of play protect, and it bit them in the butt, and it made that game far more exciting than it probably should have been. The Bruins have choking a lot of leads. They have been a Jekyll and Hyde team, and now sometimes they'll choke those leads and manage to still get a win, but there's other games where they'll just completely fall apart, and the other team will just take it to them. And it's a bit frustrating as a fan, and I'll fully admit this, because you see them beat like top end teams, like the Vancouver Canucks they beat early in the season, the Edmonton Oilers, right, like who had been really good, right, since that rough beginning of the season. But then they'll lose to some teams, and it's like, what are we doing here? Like, they'll lose some bottom feeder teams. Like, what are we doing? I think they're like a very, very good team. But if they're going to make a playoff push, they would have to have a significant addition. And this kind of goes to the trade talks that are currently happening around the Bruins, right? So a lot of people, they're like, okay, well, we need to go get ourselves a center and a defenseman. Now, I would argue you get a center, you could move Zacha to the wing, and I think that would mesh well with the Bruins if you get a top 6 center type. But then you see the mock trades of what the Bruins would have to give up. You have to give up a Matthew Poitras, a Fabian Lysell, a first-round pick in the year of our Lord, 2050 at this point. The Bruins have traded some draft picks. They don't have them this upcoming draft. When it kind of comes down to it for me as a fan of the Bruins, I would rather them just keep their prospects, keep all their draft picks, and just see where the chips fall. Right? So see where things play out. Because I even think if they make an addition like Hanifin, for example, even like Hanifin, a guy, defenseman on the back end, I'm not sure if that's enough to move the needle for me to consider the Bruins a Stanley Cup contender, or one of the favorites, I should say, is a Stanley Cup contender. They'll be in that conversation because of the way they play, but like when I look at around the league, there's a lot of talented teams and some more talented team than Boston, right? I don't think it's crazy to say I don't think there's any, unless you're a homer, I don't think anyone looks at the Bruins as a pure favorite to win the Cup this season. I think it's in Boston's best interest to, if they're going to trade pieces, and it would have to be guys like Grzelcyk, Forbort, and Ullmark, and we'll kind of go into the Ullmark conversation in a minute. Those are the pieces you'd have to move, and you should not give up any futures. Forbort and Grzelcyk's deal is expiring at the end of this season. If you can get a rental for a rental, essentially, I say, what the hell, go for it, right? But I'm not trading a Mason Lohrei, who's a promising defenseman who, if he keeps improving on the defensive side of the ice, is going to be a top 4 guy, if not a top pairing guy. And then, I'm not going to give up a guy like Matthew Poitras, who looked pretty solid. I mean, he had some rough patches like most teenager rookies would, but I liked Matthew Poitras' poise and puck possession, and I think he, at the very least, should be a solid second-line center in this league. I'm not going to give up a guy like Sell. I know some Bruins fans want to give up on Lysell already. I think he's still young. Providence Bruins coaches did complain about his defensive aspect of his game earlier in the year. He's putting up good points in Providence. I want to see what these guys shape up to be. I don't feel like giving up more draft picks because I don't think that makes much sense right now. If we're being honest with ourselves, I think it would be foolhardy to move any significant prospect or any draft capital for a rental that doesn't really even see. I still would argue doesn't make the Bruins like a clear-cut favorite. But if you're going to trade a guy, Ullmark is that guy. And Ullmark, Vezina, fantastic year last year. Great season. But that was 1 year. This year he's been solid, very good numbers. He's a very good NHL number 1 starter. He is. But the Bruins have Jeremy Swayman, and I've liked what I've seen from Jeremy Swayman. Now, Gasper, I was listening to 98.5 when I was driving around. Gasper and Murray's show. Gasper's like, I'm not sure about Jeremy Swayman and all that. I think that's stupid at this point. I think, is it a sure thing with Swayman? Could he regress? Absolutely. Sometimes guys regress. But I've seen enough from Jeremy Swayman that gives me full confidence that he can be a starter in the NHL. Now, is he a Hall of Fame level goalie? I'm not going to go that far yet. Maybe, maybe not, right? Maybe he slows down. Maybe he comes back down to earth. We've all seen these goaltenders have these great runs and then crash back down to earth. It is possible. But the thing here with the Bruins, and this is the luxury they have good goaltenders in the third and fourth in the organizational depth chart, if you want to put it that way. Brandon Bussi, statistically having a little bit of a down year compared to last year, but they're very high on him. I think he would be fine in a backup role at the NHL level. And Michael DiPietro, a guy that got destroyed. Like Vancouver just took it to him out back and destroyed his development. He has been phenomenal in the Bruins organization. Like last year, it was the Maine Mariners, the ECHL team. They got him from Vancouver. He played a little bit in Providence, I think a couple games. And then this year, he's been phenomenal. He's actually been better statistically than Bussi. And it's not like DiPietro was some scrub. Like he was viewed very highly at one point, and then Vancouver just during that shortened season, I should say, due to what was going on at the time. I have to be very careful. I don't want to get this video restricted. How I word that. They destroyed his development. They had him on like the taxi squad. I'm like, with a young guy, like it made no sense. So I think DiPietro or Bussi would be fine in a backup role and would allow Jeremy Swayman. Now you would have to have him take on more of a starter role and play more of the games, like around 70% of the games. But I don't think that's a bad thing either. And this was also a conversation point that some people have. Well, Swayman's angry. Swayman's mad. Well, he can go cry in his Porsche. When the Bruins back up that Brinks truck, they're going to pay Jeremy Swayman. If they move Ullmark, they're going to sure as shit pay for Jeremy Swayman. Let's not get that twisted. And I don't think it's that toxic of a relationship. He's just referenced how he's used it as fuel to better himself. And I think it's actually been a good thing for him. Really. Arbitration's a bad thing for players at times. I know some things can get said that hurt people's feelings, but let's just kind of call it what it is. Like, he's having a phenomenal year, and maybe a pissed off Jeremy Swayman was a good thing to happen to the Bruins. And it made him improve his game. Stay in the area. Just become a better goaltender. That could have been the reality check. That could have been the reality check he needed. And was he not happy about was probably said in those meetings? Absolutely. But has anything indicated on ice or even on ice that he doesn't want to be back in Boston? Probably a little bit, butthurt with how things went. But if the Bruins pay him a significant amount and give him a good term, he's not going to turn that down. Maybe he'd be foolish to do so. But, getting back to Ullmark, I think he makes the most sense. And will Ullmark get you a guy like Hanifin? Maybe, maybe not. I think if the Bruins really want to go for it, I think you make a package. Maybe you move a Grzelcyk, maybe an Ullmark in a package to get like a guy like a Hanifin or some, another good top six center. There's ability to improve this roster, in my opinion. But I think it would be a fatal mistake. I think it would be a grave mistake, I should say, that if the Bruins trade draft capital, trade their prospects, trade Matthew Poitras, Fabian Lysell, Mason Loy, unless I am getting a superstar, star-level type player, if I'm trading all these pieces, it doesn't make sense. You got to see what you have with Matthew Poitras. You got to see what you have with Lysell. You can't give up these guys for pure rentals. It makes no sense. It just doesn't. I don't think a guy like Hanifin puts you over the top. I would argue I don't really think there's many players that really put you over the top right now. Unless for some reason, Nathan McKinnon, Connor McDavid, Kucherov, unless there's a player out there that I can't think of that would be possibly available, I just don't think it makes sense. I have talked about Vladimir Tarasenko. I don't think you should have to give up much for him. Ottawa's not a good team. You could have them retain half, and maybe you just move a piece to Ottawa, kind of exchange expiring contracts. I think that's a piece that would kind of make sense for the Bruins. Claude Giroux, I don't see him kind of leaving Ottawa as a hometown boy. But I really don't think much is going to happen in this trade deadline. Now, maybe Don Sweeney just surprises me and gives me the shock of my life and just really is active. I just don't see it happening for the Bruins. I don't think it's in the card. They might add one player. But after last year with, Orlov, Hathaway, Bertuzzi, I don't see the Bruins making the same mistake. In retrospect, when you look at the Bertuzzi trade, it was a great trade. I wasn't mad at it, right? But you're assuming you could retain him. But you gave up a lot for a guy that's just was there for, a few months? I think the Bruins would be foolish to just keep giving up futures because at some point, and I think it already kind of has, by doing this, it's kind of biting you in the butt, biting you in the ass. You're really kind of running into a situation where your prospects pool is lean. Now, I think highly of some of the guys in the system, but outside of a few names, there's nothing crazy. Before I get out of here, this is going to be kind of a rant. I don't even know what the hell I'll title this. I'll just probably my honest opinion of the Bruins, right? That's what I'll do, even if you've watched this far in the video. Probably not. Anyways, Justin Brazeau. Or Brazeau. I liked what I saw. Big body. Big fucking dude. Big dude. I didn't think the skating was that bad, as the scouting report said. I think he's worked on it quite a bit. He's got a good touch in front of the net. Put him on a fourth line, and I'm fine with it. Honestly. I mean, with Sean Thornton, fleet of foot. I mean, Zach Parise was a burner, but really, you don't need to have the greatest skating to be this role. Now, mind you, Brazeau's not like some big physical presence. He's not gonna knock teeth out, but he's like 6'5", right? 6'4", 6'5", like 230, 240, something a lot of size to him. You can notice that. You can't teach size. I think in a role with the Bruins, that's what they need. A guy that's willing to get in front of the net, go the dirty areas, and just bury it. And hats off to that guy really sticking with it. Went to, the Toronto organization. I mean, it was last year as an overager in North Bay. He had a ridiculous season. But, went to Toronto. Bruins brought him in. I think if you look at his prospect profile, he's put up some good stats in the minors. Like, in a fourth line role, give it a shot. Why not? See what the kid's got. He's got size. He looked pretty solid in the limited time I saw him in the game. Why the hell not? But I don't know. Let me know your thoughts down below. Do you think the Bruins should make a trade, or do you think just stay pat? Would you want to trade Ullmark? Would you not want to trade Ullmark? Let me know all your thoughts down below in the comments section. I'm Paul from the locker room, and if you want to, I'm not forcing you to. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like, comment down below, and if you feel pity just for a little bit, check out the Patreon. See you guys in the next one.